Public Library Twitch channel. I'm Anne.
I'm Christina.
And today we are back with Frankenstein. It's been a little while. Hopefully you all enjoyed story time for adults, spooky story time last week with Emily. But we're back. We're reminding ourselves what happened. And I'm sure it's going to go great for our good friend Victor Frankenstein. So last time, Frankenstein kind of accepted his lot in life and said he would try to make a lady companion for the monster. And to do so, he has been gathering body parts, like, you know, a normal person. And
like we all do,
like
right?
we all do. And he realized he really wanted to, like, confer with some experts in England. So he and his good friend Henry Clerval, who is the sunshine of all of our lives, and I'm sure he will come out of this unscathed, they headed off to England. And it's interesting because I'm realizing this might be foreshadowing, but I don't remember for sure.
Yeah.
But he mentions when he's heading out, I hope the monster doesn't think I'm just running away. But then he does nothing to tell the monster. He just assumes, he'll probably follow me. Like, it'll be great. And so they head to England, and once again, like, how he's collecting these body parts without anyone noticing, unexplained. But he's working on it, and so he eventually was like, Clerval, you're too sunny. I need to do this work alone. And so he basically heads up into the Highlands of Scotland to, like, a shack to do. I think he's in the Orkneys, so he's like in the islands on the northern part of Scotland.
Yeah.
My ancestral homeland, where there's more sheep than people. But that's because of the English. So, but he's kind of in, like, a shack on an island, trying to like make this lady, essentially. That's where we left off.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's go ahead and get started.
It's gonna be great.
It's gonna be great. It's all gonna go so well.
It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. Sunshine, rainbows.
Sunshine, rainbows. This has probably got a great ending. It's probably a very uplifting ending. Frankenstein. The world's first sci-fi novel.
By Mary Shelley.
By Mary Shelley. Not Percy Shelley. We don't like Percy Shelley.
I sat one evening in my laboratory. The sun had set and the moon was just rising from the sea. I had not sufficient light for my employment, and I remained idle in a pause of consideration of whether I should leave my labor for the night or hasten its conclusion by an unremitting attention to it. Oh, I also have to say, I feel like he also spends, like, a lot of time. Like, he just wastes a lot of time.
He does waste a lot of time. He really, really does.
Like, so him being
I
like,
promise I'm doing work. I mean, vibes though, like.
I guess. As I sat, wasting time, a train of reflection occurred to me, which led me to consider the effects of what I was now doing.
Also, I'm gonna say, because you might hear some ambient noise, we have some people working on the roof today.
Right.
And we didn't know about it, and actually you can hear it in the basement too, so it's not like they could even have moved.
Because it's probably like vibrating the walls.
Yeah, so if you hear some ambient noise, sorry. I can't do anything about it. Yeah.
3 years before, I was engaged in the same manner and had created a fiend whose unparalleled barbarity had desolated my heart and filled it forever with the bitterest remorse. I was now about to form another being of whose dispositions I was alike ignorant. She might become 10,000 times more malignant than her mate in delight for its own sake, in murder and wretchedness. He had sworn to quit the neighborhood of man and hide himself in deserts, but she had not, and she, who in all probability was to become a thinking and reasoning animal, might refuse to comply with the compact made before her creation. They might even hate each other.
Yeah, I mean, did no one think about it? She might have her own personality. Spoiler alert. Her own needs.
Has it been months? It took him months to think about this?
It took him months to think about this, which I'm like, immediately I was like, this is going to backfire. Like, one, she could not even like you. Two, like, is this just going to be an endless chain of, like, well, I'm not happy with my mate, so Frankenstein, you have to make me another person.
Right.
Well, it turns out I'm into women, so I need you to make me another woman. Like, just, it's a never-ending cycle.
Jeez. They might even hate each other.
Yep.
The creature who already lived loathed his own deformity, and might he not conceive a greater abhorrence for it when it came before his eyes in the female form? So many good thoughts that you should have had
So many good
so
thoughts.
long ago. She also might turn with disgust from him to the superior beauty of man. She might quit him, and he be again alone, exasperated by the fresh provocation of being deserted by one of his own species. Even if they were to leave Europe and inhabit the deserts of the New World, yet one of the first results of those sympathies for which the daemon thirsted would be children, and a race of
You're just assuming. Oh no, that's true. They might try to have children. You know, you can get rid of. You don't have to give her ovaries. It's not a requirement.
Right? What about if they come back and they're like, okay, well now we need you to make us a child?
Oh, that's true. That could happen too. That would be even worse in some ways. Because you have to get the kid body parts.
Yeah.
And I think Frankenstein would be within his rights to say no.
Yeah.
It's just the two of you.
Just
The two of us. Hiding out in the Amazon where no people live, according to these Europeans.
And a race of devils would be propagated upon the earth who might make the very existence of the species of man a condition precarious and full of terror. Had I right for my own benefit to inflict this curse upon everlasting generations? I had before been moved by the sophisms of the being I had created. I had been struck senseless by his fiendish threats, but now for the first time the wickedness of my promise burst upon me. I shuddered to think that
It took him so long to realize this was the problem.
I shuddered to think that future ages might curse me as their pest, whose selfishness had not hesitated to buy its own peace at the price, perhaps, of the existence of the whole human race. I trembled and my heart failed within me when, on looking up, I saw by the light of the moon the daemon at the casement.
Oh, good. He did follow you.
A ghastly grin wrinkled his lips as he gazed on me, where I sat fulfilling the task which he had allotted to me. Yes, he had followed me in my travels. He had loitered in forests, hid himself in caves, or taken refuge in wide and desert heaths, and he now came to mark my progress and claim the fulfillment of my promise.
That just sounds like so great. He like turned and looked. He's just up
Honestly, he's been there for ever, but it takes Frankenstein a really long time
That's
to
true, because he's too busy being like, have I made a mistake?
As I looked on him, his countenance expressed the utmost extent of malice and treachery. I thought with a sensation of madness on my promise of creating another like to him, and trembling with passion, tore to pieces the thing on which I was engaged.
While he's watching, you could talk to him first.
The wretch saw me destroy the creature on whose future existence he depended for happiness, and with a howl of devilish despair and revenge withdrew. You think that's gonna go well?
Look, has Frankenstein ever made really good decisions?
No.
Exactly.
I left the room and, locking the door, made a solemn vow in my own heart never to resume my labors. And then, with trembling steps, I sought my own apartment. I was alone. None were near me to dissipate the gloom and relieve me from the sickening oppression of the most terrible reveries. Several hours passed, and I remained near my window, gazing on the sea. It was almost motionless, for the winds were hushed, and all nature reposed under the eye of the quiet moon.
He's just staring at the ocean now.
It's
It's that meme of that guy with hands behind his back, just staring at the ocean.
I mean, he spent a long time just laying on his boat, staring up at the sky.
True. That's true. This is what he does, basically.
A few fishing vessels alone specked the water, and now and then the gentle breeze wafted the sound of voices as the fishermen called to one another. I felt the silence, although I was hardly conscious of its extreme profundity, until my ear was suddenly arrested by the paddling of oars near the shore, and a person landed close to my house. In a few minutes after, I heard the creaking of my door, as if someone endeavored to open it softly. I trembled from head to foot. I felt a presentiment of who it was, and wished to rouse one of the peasants who dwelt in a cottage not far from mine, but I was overcome by the sensation of helplessness, so often felt in frightful dreams, when you in vain endeavor to fly from an impending danger, and was rooted to the spot. Presently, I heard the sound of footsteps along the passage. The door opened, and the wretch whom I dreaded appeared. Shutting the door, he approached me and said in a smothered voice, "You have destroyed the work which you began. What is it that you intend? Do you dare to break your promise? I have endured toil and misery. I left Switzerland with you. I crept along the shores of the Rhine, among its willow islands and over the summits of its hills. I have dwelt many months in the heaths of England and among the deserts of Scotland. I have endured incalculable fatigue and cold and hunger. Do you dare destroy my hopes? Begone! I do break my promise. Never will I create another like yourself, equal in deformity and wickedness. Slave, I before reasoned with you, but you have proved yourself unworthy of my condescension. Remember that I have power. You believe yourself miserable, but I can make you so wretched that the light of day will be hateful to you. You are my creator, but I am your master. Obey. The hour of my irresolution is past, and the period of your powers arrived. Your threats cannot move me to do an act of wickedness, but they confirm in me a determination of not creating you a companion in vice. Shall I, in cool blood, set loose upon the earth a daemon whose delight is in death and wretchedness? Begone, I am firm, and your words will only exasperate my rage. Though I'm sure getting mad at each other is gonna be a great move.
Communication is key.
The monster saw my determination in my face and gnashed his teeth in the impotence of anger. Shall each man, cried he, find a wife for his bosom, and each beast have his mate, and I be alone? I had feelings of affection, and they were requited by detestation and scorn. Man, you may hate, but beware. Your hours will pass in dread and misery, and soon the bolt will fall, which must ravish from you your happiness forever. Are you to be happy while I grovel in the intensity of my wretchedness? You can blast my other passions, but revenge remains. Revenge, henceforth, dearer than light or food. I may die, but first you, my tyrant and tormentor, shall curse the sun that gazes on your misery. Beware, for I am fearless and therefore powerful. I will watch with the wiliness of a snake, that I may sting with its venom. Man, you shall repent of the injuries you inflict. Devil, cease, and do not poison the air with these sounds of malice. I have declared my resolution to you, and I am no coward to bend beneath words. Leave me, I am inexorable. It is well, I go, but remember, I shall be with you on your wedding night.
Dun dun dun!
Weird, but okay.
I mean, I guess that's kind of proof that
Yeah.
he had been like
Listen.
close enough to listen. 'Cause
Yeah.
before they left for England, his dad was like, "And when you get back, you're gonna
Wedding.
marry your sister," who's not actually blood relation, but raised as a sister, Elizabeth.
Yes. I started forward and exclaimed, "Villain, before you sign my death warrant, be sure that you are yourself safe."
Well,
Bless you.
Thank you.
I would have seized him, but he eluded me and quitted the house with precipitation. In a few moments I saw him in his boat, which shot across the waters with an arrowy swiftness and was soon lost amidst the waves.
He's very good at rowing.
All was again silent, but his words rang in my ears. I burned with rage to pursue the murderer of my peace and precipitate him into the ocean. I walked up and down my room hastily and perturbed, while my imagination conjured up 1,000 images to torment and sting me. Why had I not followed him and closed with him in mortal strife?
Well, okay, that worked so well for you last time.
But I had suffered him to depart, and he had directed his course towards the mainland. I shuddered to think who might be the next victim sacrificed to his insatiate revenge.
Who's closest?
And then I thought again of his words, "I will be with you on your wedding night."
Hey.
He's not very quick, I have to
I know.
say.
I know. He's very much the like book smart, not common sense smart type of guy.
Yeah.
Because he's like, wow, yeah, I should probably fight him. Like, if you were intending to do this, you could have arranged a trap.
Right?
You could have had a gun on you. Like,
Right?
Yeah. There were things you could do, but you didn't.
Manufactured a weapon or something.
Yeah, of some
like-
kind. Like, had Clerval go get you something so that the monster didn't know. Also, I'm just realizing maybe the monster thinks Clerval is his wife. They've been traveling together,
That's true.
and I'm very worried about Clerval right now. So
That then was the period fixed for the fulfillment of my destiny. In that hour I should die and at once satisfy and extinguish his malice. The prospect did not move me to fear, yet when I thought of my beloved Elizabeth, of her tears and endless sorrow, when she should find her lover so barbarously snatched from her, I went in confident, and then I was like, nope, my mouth doesn't want to say it.
So it's very like, I'm sorry, all the things, I know I've read this before, but all the things that the monster is saying to him is like, you will curse the day that you were born. Like, you will curse like the first smile your mother gave your father, right? In what way does me dying immediately
Like,
fulfill all of the things that the monster is saying?
he's not very quick on the uptake.
He's not very quick on the uptake. Anyways.
Tears, the first I had shed for many months, streamed from my eyes, and I resolved not to fall before my enemy without a bitter struggle. The night passed away and the sun rose from the ocean. My feelings became calmer, if it may be called calmness, when the violence of rage sinks into the depths of despair. I left the house, the horrid scene of the last night's contention, and walked on the beach of the sea, which I almost regarded as an insuperable barrier between me and my fellow creatures. Nay, a wish that such should prove the fact stole across me. I desired that I might pass my life on that barren rock, wearily it is true, but uninterrupted by any sudden shock of misery. If I returned, it was to be sacrificed, or to see those whom I most loved die under the grasp of a daemon whom I had myself created. I walked about the isle like a restless specter, separated from all it loved and miserable in the separation. When it became noon and the sun rose higher, I lay down on the grass.
There we are again. All he's doing, I gotta wonder what the people who live here are thinking. Like, this random guy from Switzerland showed up, took a house, was just in it for a really long time. Now, here are the things he has done today. Stared at the ocean. Then, wandered around. And now he's laying on the grass.
I lay down on the grass and was overpowered by a deep sleep. I had been awake the whole of the preceding night. My nerves were agitated and my eyes inflamed by watching and misery. The sleep into which I now sank refreshed me, and when I awoke, I again felt as if I belonged to a race of human beings like myself, and I began to reflect upon what had passed with greater composure, yet still the words of the fiend rang in my ears like a death knell. They appeared like a dream, yet distinct and oppressive as a reality. The sun had far descended, and I still sat on the shore, satisfying my appetite, which had become ravenous, with an oaten cake, when I saw a fishing boat land close to me, and one of the men brought me a packet. It contained letters from Geneva and one from Clerval entreating me to join him. He said that he was wearing away his time fruitlessly where he was, that letters from the friends he had formed in London desired his return to complete the negotiation they had entered into for his Indian enterprise. He would not any longer delay his departure, but as his journey to London might be followed even sooner than he now conjectured by his longer voyage, he entreated me to bestow as much of my society on him as I could spare. He besought me, therefore, to leave my solitary isle and to meet him at Perth, that we might proceed southwards together. This letter, in a degree, recalled me to life, and I determined to quit my island at the expiration of 2 days. Yet before I departed, there was a task to perform, on which I shuddered to reflect. I must pack up my chemical instruments, and for that purpose I must enter the room which had been the scene of my odious work, and I must handle those utensils, the sight of which was sickening to me. Also, it probably smells real nasty.
Yeah, I was like, you also have to bury a body.
Right? I was thinking, like, when he wandered away at one point, I was like, is he gonna, like, leave and just, like,
leave everything in there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, he just vanishes. It's not like there's cops on this island. Like, it's tiny.
Well, and nobody might know his name or anything. They're just like, yeah, that weird dude who stared up at the sky all the time left a house full of body parts.
Yeah.
Weird, right?
Weird. Oh, man.
The next morning at daybreak, I summoned sufficient courage and unlocked the door of my laboratory. The remains of the half-finished creature whom I had destroyed lay scattered on the floor, and I almost felt as if I had mangled the living flesh of a human being.
Yeah, you kind of... Yeah.
I paused to collect myself and then entered the chamber. With trembling hand, I conveyed the instruments out of the room, but I reflected that I ought not to leave the relics of my work to excite the horror and suspicion of the peasants.
He finally got there. Yeah. Hey, this weird guy showed up. It smells like death in his house. Not sure what's up with that. He had a bunch of weird instruments, and he stared at the ocean a lot.
He totally was gonna leave those body parts, y'all.
Totally gonna leave those body parts. Like, good thing he thought that part through. I guess.
And I accordingly put them into a basket with a great quantity of stones and laying them up, determined to throw them into the sea that very night.
That's such a bad idea. I'm sorry. Body parts float? I know way too much about true crime. So body parts float. There's literally a whole series of feet that have turned up on beaches in Vancouver. And at first they were like, it's probably like bodies of people who were like in the water because shoes are also like very floaty. So as things, decompose, ligaments go first. And so the feet just like pop right up. But I'm sorry, you throw it into the ocean, like Job in Arrested Development throwing the letter into the ocean, it's coming right back here. It's coming right back here. That's how tides work.
And in the meantime, I sat upon the beach.
Just here with my, I swear.
There's bees in this man's head.
There's bees in this man.
Employed in cleaning and arranging my chemical apparatus. Nothing could be more complete than the alteration that had taken place in my feelings since the night of the appearance of the daemon. I had before regarded my promise with a gloomy despair as a thing that, whatever consequences, must be fulfilled. But I now felt as if a film had been taken from before my eyes, and that I for the first time saw clearly the idea of renewing my labors did not for one instant occur to me. The threat I had heard weighed on my thoughts, but I did not reflect that a voluntary act of mine could avert it. I had resolved in my own mind that to create another like the fiend I had first made would be an act of the basest and most atrocious selfishness, and I banished from my mind every thought that could lead to a different conclusion. Between 2 and 3 in the morning, the moon rose, and I then, putting my basket aboard a little skiff, sailed out about 4 miles from the shore.
It's a little bit more acceptable, but it's still not great. There's still going to be like body parts washing up on various islands for the next like month and a half. If you're lucky, an orca will be nearby and will take care of this business.
Also, the lady next door is like looking out her window. She's like,
wow,
honey, that weird man is...
He's going out. He's got a boat now. It's like 2 in the morning and off he goes. He's got a basket. It smells like death.
The scene was perfectly solitary. A few boats were returning towards land.
There's witnesses. Continue.
But I sailed away from them. Oh, good.
Law and Order, Frankenstein once again going great here.
I felt as if I was about the commission of a dreadful crime.
Yeah, you're disposing of body parts inappropriately. It is a crime. You stole them. How did you get them?
And avoided with shuddering anxiety any encounter with my fellow creatures.
Good plan.
At one time, the moon, which had before been clear, was suddenly overspread by a thick cloud, and I took advantage of that moment of darkness and cast my basket into the sea.
Oh my god, you just cast the whole... Okay, you cast the basket with the stones in it into the sea. It's still not a great plan, but it's a little bit better than just like, here's a lake.
I listened to the gurgling sound as it sank, and then sailed away from the spot. The sky became clouded, but the air was pure, although chilled by the northeast breeze that was then rising. But it refreshed me and filled me with such agreeable sensations that I resolved to prolong my stay on the water, and fixing the rudder in a direct position, stretched myself at the bottom of the boat.
There he is, staring up at the sky again. From the bottom of the boat.
Every time he sits or lies down, I'm just like, what?
I just imagine him as like being just like, very like... Like, I can't imagine him in any other, like, he's just like, I will lay here.
Yeah, no, that's totally...
As straight as possible, basically. No movement.
Clouds hid the moon, everything was obscure, and I heard only the sound of the boat as its keel cut through the waves. The murmur lulled me, and in a short time I slept soundly. I do not know how long I remained in this situation, but when I awoke, I found that the sun had already mounted considerably.
Yeah, you're on the ocean, dude.
The wind was high, and the waves continually threatened the safety of my little skiff. I found that the wind was northeast and must have driven me far from the coast from which I had embarked.
You didn't even anchor yourself.
I endeavored to change. He was too busy staring up at the sky.
He's too busy just, like, disassociating, basically. I'm sorry, this plan, it was such a bad plan. Such a bad plan. Continue.
I endeavored
I'm just disappointed in him. I thought he'd be smarter at committing a crime.
I don't know, man. Bees in his head.
Bees in his head, you're right.
I endeavored to change my course, but quickly found that if I again made the attempt, the boat would be instantly filled with water. Thus situated, my only resource was to drive before the wind. I confess that I felt a few sensations of terror. I had no compass with me and was so slenderly acquainted with the geography of this part of the world that the sun was of little benefit to me.
My God.
I might be driven into the wild Atlantic and feel all the tortures of starvation, or be swallowed up in the immeasurable waters that roared and buffeted around me.
Look, okay, I'm just saying, when you go on the ocean, you have to respect the ocean. I also am very into shipwrecks, as a guy is now doing leaf blowing right outside of this room. So that's fun. This has been great. There was an article about that submersible explosion, and one of the quotes in there that I will never stop thinking about is the price of exploring the deep ocean is you have to have respect for the ocean. This guy has no respect for the ocean.
No respect.
The ocean is terrifying. The ocean will kill you. He has no compass. He didn't even anchor himself. What an idiot. Book smart, not street smart.
I had already been out many hours and felt the torment of a burning thirst, a prelude to my other sufferings. I looked on the wind only to be replaced. I looked on the heavens, which were covered by clouds that flew before the wind, only to be replaced by others. I looked upon the sea. It was to be my grave.
Honestly, you deserve it.
Fiend, I exclaimed, your task is already fulfilled. I thought of Elizabeth, of my father, and of Clerval, all left behind, on whom the monster might satisfy his sanguinary and merciless passions. This idea plunged me into a reverie so despairing and frightful that even now, when the scene is on the point of closing before me forever, I shudder to reflect on it. Some hours passed thus, but by degrees, as the sun declined towards the horizon, the wind died away into a gentle breeze, and the sea became free from breakers. But these gave place to a heavy swell. I felt sick and hardly able to hold the rudder, when suddenly I saw a line of high land towards the south. Land. Almost spent as I was by fatigue and the dreadful suspense I endured for several hours, this sudden certainty of life rushed like a flood of warm joy to my heart, and tears gushed from my eyes.
This is what you get, man. You fell asleep on the ocean without anchoring yourself, in a tiny, tiny boat with no idea where you were and no compass and no supplies.
Neighbors are like, well, there it goes.
They're like, wow, he never came back. Crazy.
How mutable are our feelings, and how strange is that clinging love we have of life, even in the excess of misery. I constructed another sail with a part of my dress and eagerly steered my course towards the land. It had a wild and rocky appearance, but as I approached nearer, I easily perceived the traces of cultivation. I saw vessels near the shore and found myself suddenly transported back to the neighborhood of civilized man. I carefully traced the windings of the land and hailed a steeple, which I at length saw issuing from behind a small promontory. As I was in a state of extreme debility, I resolved to sail directly towards the town, as a place where I could most easily procure nourishment.
Where's your money, dude? Did you have any?
He's got nothing. Except bees in his head.
Bees in his head.
Fortunately, I had money with me.
Okay, there we go. All I had to do was wait. I'm sorry.
All right.
But still bees in his head.
Also, there's a typo in his book because there's no space after this.
We caught him.
As I turned the promontory, I perceived a small neat town in a good harbor, which I entered. My heart pounded with joy at my unexpected escape. As I was occupied in fixing the boat and arranging the sails, several people crowded towards the spot.
Yeah.
They seemed much surprised at my appearance, but instead of offering me any assistance, whispered together with gestures that at any other time might have produced in me a slight sensation of alarm.
Let's review again. At 2 a.m, Frankenstein took a boat out into the ocean to get rid of body parts. He then proceeded to fall asleep in the boat, which was not anchored. What do you think he looks like right now? What do you think he smells like?
Ew. As it was, I merely remarked that they spoke English, and I therefore addressed them in that language. My good friends, said I, will you be so kind as to tell me the name of this town and inform me where I am?
Where am I?
You will know that soon enough, replied a man with a hoarse voice. Maybe you are come to a place that will not prove much to your taste, but you will not be consulted as to your quarters, I promise you. I was exceedingly surprised on receiving so rude an answer from a stranger, and I was also disconcerted on perceiving the frowning and angry countenances of his companions.
Yeah.
Why do you answer me so roughly? I replied. Surely it is not the custom of Englishmen to receive strangers so inhospitably. I do not know, said the man, what the custom of the English may be, but it is the custom of the Irish to hate villains.
Yeah, he's in Ireland. Also, nothing will piss off an Irish person or a Scottish person faster than calling them English. Because they're like, well, you speak English, like,
While this strange dialogue continued, I perceived the crowd rapidly increase. Their faces expressed a mixture of curiosity and anger, which annoyed and in some degree alarmed me. I inquired the way to the inn, but no one replied. I then moved forward, and a murmuring sound arose from the crowd as they followed and surrounded me. When an ill-looking man approached, tapped me on the shoulder, and said, "Come, sir, you must follow me to Mr. Kerwin's to give an account of yourself." Who is Mr. Kerwin? Why am I to give an account of myself? Is not this a free country? Aye, sir, free enough for honest folks. Mr. Kerwin is a magistrate, and you are to give an account of the death of a gentleman who was found murdered here last night. This answer startled me, but I presently recovered myself. I was innocent and could easily be proved, and that could easily be proved. Can it, dude?
I mean, yeah, like your story is pretty wild. I fell asleep in a boat and outside
And
also,
drifted from
the Orkneys. So if this is like, here we have England and Scotland, and here's Ireland. The Orkneys are like over here. So depending on where he is in Ireland, he basically went like around the top and over towards, well, he did say northeast wind, so that kind of, no, it would have to be northwest.
Oh yeah, it would be.
The wind would have to be coming from the northeast to, I don't know. He drifted far. Let's hope he's in Northern Ireland.
Accordingly, I followed my conductor in silence and was led to one of the best houses in the town. I was ready to sink from fatigue and hunger, but being surrounded by a crowd, I thought it politic to rouse all my strength and know that no physical debility might be construed into apprehension or conscious guilt. Little did I then expect the calamity that was in a few moments to overwhelm me and extinguish in horror and despair all fear of ignominy. Anemone? I live in an anemone. Ignominy or death. I must pause here, for it requires all my fortitude to recall the memory of the frightful events which I am about to relate, in proper detail, to my recollection.
Chapter 21.
I was soon introduced into the presence of the magistrate, an old benevolent man with calm and mild manners. He looked upon me, however, with some degree of severity, and then, turning towards my conductors, he asked who appeared as witnesses on this occasion. About half a dozen men came forward, and one being selected by the magistrate, he deposed that he had been out fishing the night before with his son and brother-in-law, Daniel Nugent. When about 10 o'clock they observed a strong northerly blast rising, and they accordingly put in for port. It was a very dark night, as the moon had not yet risen. They did not land at the harbor, but as they had been accustomed, at a creek about 2 miles below. He walked on first, carrying a part of the fishing tackle, and his companions followed him at some distance. As he was proceeding along the sands, he struck his foot against something and fell at his length on the ground. His companions came up to assist him, and by the light of their lantern, they found that he had fallen on the body of a man, who was to all appearance dead. Their first supposition was that it was the corpse of some person who had been drowned and was thrown on shore by the waves. But on examination, they found that the clothes were not wet, and even that the body was not then cold.
You're doing a better job of investigating than any of those Swiss ones after, like, the literal murder of
the kid.
I may be biased because I am Irish, but, like, better investigators. Thank you.
They instantly carried it to the cottage of an old woman near the spot and endeavored, but in vain, to restore it to life. It appeared to be a handsome young man about 25 years of age. He had apparently been strangled, for there was no sign of any violence except the black marks of fingers on his neck. The first part of this deposition did not in the least interest me.
Sounds familiar, though.
But when the mark of the fingers was mentioned, I remembered the murder of my brother and felt myself extremely agitated. My limbs trembled and a mist came over my eyes, which obliged me to lean on a chair for support. The magistrate observed me with a keen eye and of course drew an unfavorable augury from my manner. The son confirmed his father's account, but when Daniel was called, he swore positively that just before the fall of his companion, he saw a boat with a single man in it at a short distance from the shore. And as far as he could judge by the light of a few stars, it was the same boat in which I had just landed. A woman deposed that she...
It was the middle of the night, but continue.
A woman deposed that she lived near the beach and was standing at the door of her cottage waiting for the return of the fisherman about an hour before she heard of the discovery of the body, when she saw a boat with only one man in it push off from that part of the shore where the corpse was afterwards found.
I do gotta say, I know why they're interrogating him about this, but how, and he does have bees in his head. How dumb do you think you would have to be as a murderer to come in the night, murder someone, and then tie up your boat the next day in that town and say, where am I?
I don't know. I mean, he could think, oh, this is my alibi, or
yeah, I don't know. I would have gone to a different town.
True.
News doesn't travel that fast. It's the 1700s.
That's true. Another woman confirmed the account of the fisherman having brought the body into her house. It was not cold. They put it into a bed and rubbed it, and Daniel went to the town for an apothecary, but life was quite gone. Several other men were examined concerning my landing, and they agreed that with the strong north wind that had arisen during the night, it was very probable that I had beaten about for many hours and had been obliged to return nearly to the same spot from which I had departed. Besides, they observed that it appeared that I had brought the body from another place, and it was likely that, as I did not appear to know the shore, I might have put into the harbor ignorant of the distance of the town of blank from the place where I had deposited the corpse. Mr. Kerwin, on hearing this evidence, desired that I should be taken into the room where the body lay for interment, that it might be observed what effect the sight of it would produce upon me.
Quick, before you go further, who do you think it is?
Is it Clerval?
I bet it's Clerval.
I mean, I don't know what other dude you know
yeah.
of. Like,
that is in the vicinity.
Right, yeah, like if he would know somebody.
Yeah. It's definitely
Yeah.
gonna be Clerval.
This idea, because where was Clerval?
Perth in Scotland.
Okay.
But the monster had a 2-day head start.
That's right. I forgot. Bees in his head
was just staring
around,
at the ocean while his friend was being murdered and transported to Ireland, where he conveniently washed up on the same spot.
This idea was probably suggested by the extreme agitation I had exhibited when the mode of the murder had been described. I was accordingly conducted by the magistrate and several other persons to the inn. I could not help being struck by the strange coincidences that had taken place during this eventful night. But knowing that I had been conversing with several persons in the island I had inhabited about the time that the body had been found, I was perfectly tranquil as to the consequences of the affair.
We also need you to know that Thomas has said in a pre-CPR world, they just gave warm corpses a nice massage. And that wakes them up.
I know, they're like, we just gave it a rub.
Yeah, just quick rub down. Quick rub down.
Hey,
Hey, you okay? No, you have marks of strangulation on your neck, but maybe you're fine.
you know, we put you in a nice warm bed.
Yeah.
You're good, right?
You're good. Anyways, so meet Clerval's corpse.
I entered the room where the corpse lay and was led up to the coffin. How can I describe my sensations on beholding it? I feel yet parched with horror, nor can I reflect on that terrible moment without shuddering in agony. The examination, the presence of the magistrate and witnesses passed like a dream from my memory when I saw the lifeless form of Henry Clerval stretched before me.
Ah, my boy.
I gasped for breath, and throwing myself on the body, I exclaimed, "Have my murderous machinations deprived you also, my dearest Henry, of life? 2 I had already destroyed. Other victims await their destiny, but you, Clerval, my friend, my benefactor."
So basically you're admitting to being a serial killer. Okay.
The human frame could no longer support the agonies that I endured, and I was carried out of the room in strong convulsions. A fever succeeded to this. I lay for 2 months on the point of death.
He's a frail boy.
My ravings, as I afterwards heard, were frightful. I called myself the murderer of William, of Justine, and of Clerval. Sometimes I entreated my attendants to assist me in the destruction of the fiend by whom I was tormented, and others I felt the fingers of the monster already grasping my neck and screaming aloud with agony and terror. Fortunately, as I spoke my native language, Mr. Kerwin alone understood me, but my gestures and bitter cries were sufficient to affright the other witnesses. Why did I not die, more miserable than man ever was before? Why did I not sink into forgetfulness and rest? Death snatches away many blooming children, the only hopes of their doting parents. How many brides and youthful lovers have been one day in the bloom of health and hope, and the next a prey for worms and the decay of the tomb? Of what materials was I made that I could thus resist so many shocks, which, like the turning of the wheel, continually renewed the torture?
Because you're the main character, sorry, but I was doomed to live, and in 2 months found myself as awaking from a dream, in a prison, stretched on a wretched bed, surrounded by jailers, turnkeys, bolts, and all the miserable apparatus of a dungeon. It was morning, I remember, when I thus awoke to understanding. I had forgotten the particulars of what had happened, and only felt as if some great misfortune had suddenly overwhelmed me. But when I looked around and saw the barred windows and the squalidness of the room in which I was, all flashed across my memory, and I groaned bitterly. This sound disturbed an old woman who was sleeping in a chair beside me. She was a hired nurse, the wife of one of the turnkeys, and her countenance expressed all those bad qualities which often characterize that class: rude. The lines of her face were hard and rude, like that of persons accustomed to see without sympathizing in sights of misery. Her tone expressed her entire indifference. She addressed me in English, and the voice struck me as one that I had heard during my sufferings. "Are you better now, sir?" said she. I replied in the same language, with a feeble voice, "I believe I am, but if it be all true, if indeed I did not dream, I am sorry that I am still alive to feel this misery and horror." That's the point, bud. It's the whole point. Congrats. "For that matter," replied the old woman, "if you mean about the gentleman you murdered, I believe that it were better for you if you were dead, for I fancy it will go hard with you. However, that's none of my business. I am sent to nurse you and get you well. I do my duty with a safe conscience. It were well if everybody did the same." I turned with loathing from the woman who could utter so unfeeling a speech to a person just saved on the very edge of death. She thinks you're a murderer. But I felt languid and unable to reflect on all that had passed. The whole series of my life appeared to me as a dream. I sometimes doubted if indeed it were all true, for it never presented itself to my mind with the force of reality. As the images that floated before me became more distinct, I grew feverish. Again. A darkness pressed around me. No one was near me who soothed me with the gentle voice of love. No dear hands supported me. The physician came and prescribed medicines, and the old woman prepared them for me, but utter carelessness was visible in the first, and the expression of brutality was strongly marked in the visage of the second. Who could be interested in the fate of a murderer but the hangman who would gain his fee? So this feels very anti-Irish somehow, I'm just saying. I'm getting a feeling. But
I'm like, wow, these people are so mean and unfeeling.
So mean and unfeeling to a murderer. To someone who, like, the magistrate understood him when he basically, like,
I killed all these people.
Yes, he killed people. These were my first reflections, but I soon learned that Mr. Kerwin had shown me extreme kindness. He had caused the best room in the prison to be prepared for me. Wretched indeed was the best. And it was he who had provided a physician and a nurse. Yeah, you could have just let him die. This would all have been over. It is true, he seldom came to see me, for although he ardently desired to relieve the sufferings of every human creature, he did not wish to be present at the agonies and miserable ravings of a murderer. He came therefore sometimes to see that I was not neglected, but his visits were short and with long intervals. One day, when I was gradually recovering, I was seated in a chair, my eyes half open and my cheeks livid like those in death. I was overcome by gloom and misery, and often reflected that I had better seek death than desire to remain in a world which to me was replete with wretchedness. At one time I considered whether I should not declare myself guilty and suffer the penalty of the law, less innocent than poor Justine had been. Yes. Such were my thoughts when the door of my apartment was opened, and Mr. Kerwin entered. His countenance expressed sympathy and compassion. He drew a chair close to mine and addressed me in French. "I fear that this place is very shocking to you. Can I do anything to make you more comfortable?" "I thank you, but all that you mention is nothing to me. On the whole earth there is no comfort which I am capable of receiving. I know that the sympathy of a stranger can be but of little relief to one borne down as you are by so strange a misfortune. But you will, I hope, soon quit this melancholy abode, for doubtless evidence can easily be brought to free you from the criminal charge. That is of my least concern. I am, by a course of strange events, become the most miserable of mortals. Persecuted and tortured as I am and have been, can death be any evil to me?" Just gotta say, it's very white man of him. Like, these are the consequences of your own actions.
Dude.
And here, I'm gonna give these to you because I think there's some comments coming through. But I do have to say, it is very white man of him to be like, I'm persecuted by the consequences of my own actions. Nothing indeed could be more unfortunate and agonizing than the strange chances that have lately occurred. Please tell me.
From Thomas, this one, her face is rude, your life is rude.
Yep, that's great. Nothing indeed could be more unfortunate and agonizing than the strange chances that have lately occurred. You were thrown by some surprising accident on this shore, renowned for its hospitality, seized immediately, and charged with murder. The first sight that was presented to your eyes was the body of your friend, murdered in so unaccountable a manner and placed, as it were, by some fiend across your path. You got other ones, or you just good?
There's some from the past. Well,
Okay.
Thomas was like, oh, so mean. They don't pamper Mr. Murder Man. Except they are pampering Mr. Murder Man. He's got the best cell and a private nurse.
Yep.
Ungrateful, wretched man.
He is very.
Oh no, if it isn't the consequences of your own actions. Oh, you're so persecuted. Poor baby.
Poor baby. What a poor baby. As Mr. Kerwin said this, notwithstanding the agitation I endured on this retrospect of my sufferings, I also felt considerable surprise at the knowledge he seemed to possess concerning me. Once again, better detectives than the ones in Switzerland. I suppose some astonishment was exhibited in my countenance, for Mr. Kerwin hastened to say, immediately upon your being taken ill, all the papers that were on your person were brought to me, and I examined them that I might discover some trace by which I could send to your relations an account of your misfortune and illness. I found several letters, and among others, one which I discovered from its commencement to be from your father. I instantly wrote to Geneva. Nearly 2 months have elapsed since the departure of my letter. But you are ill. Even now you tremble. You are unfit for agitation of any kind. This suspense is 1,000 times worse than the most horrible event. Tell me what new scene of death has been acted and whose murder I am now to lament. Your family is perfectly well, said Mr. Kerwin with gentleness, and someone, a friend, is come to visit you. I knew not by what chain of thought the idea presented itself, but it instantly darted into my mind that the murderer had come to mock at my misery and taunt me with the death of Clerval, as a new incitement for me to comply with his hellish desires. I put my hand before my eyes and cried out in agony, "Oh, take him away! I cannot see him! For God's sake, do not let him enter!" Mr. Kerwin regarded me with a troubled countenance. He could not help regarding my exclamation as a presumption of my guilt, and in a rather severe tone, I should have thought, young man, that the presence of your father would have been welcome instead of inspiring such violent repugnance. My father, cried I. That made bees in his brain. My father, cried I, while every feature and every muscle was relaxed from anguish to pleasure. Is my father indeed come? How kind, how very kind. But where is he? Why does he not hasten to me?
Boy.
My change of manner surprised and pleased the magistrate. Perhaps he thought that my former exclamation was a momentary return of delirium, and now he instantly resumed his former benevolence. He rose and quitted the room with my nurse, and in a moment my father entered it. Nothing at this moment could have given me greater pleasure than the arrival of my father. I stretched out my hand to him and cried, "Are you then safe, and Elizabeth and Ernest?" My father calmed me with assurances of their welfare, and endeavored, by dwelling on these subjects so interesting to my heart, to raise my desponding spirits. But he soon felt that a prison cannot be the abode of cheerfulness. "What a place is this that you inhabit, my son," said he, looking mournfully at the barred windows and wretched appearance of the room. "You traveled to seek happiness, but a fatality seems to pursue you. And poor Clerval." The name of my unfortunate and murdered friend was an agitation too great to be endured in my weak state. I shed tears. "Alas, yes, my father," replied I. "Some destiny of the most horrible kind hangs over me, and I must live to fulfill it, or surely I should have died on the coffin of Henry." We were not allowed to converse for any length of time, for the precarious state of my health rendered every precaution necessary that could ensure tranquility. Mr. Kerwin came in and insisted that my strength should not be exhausted by too much exertion, but the appearance of my father was to me like that of my good angel, and I gradually recovered my health. As my sickness quitted me, I was absorbed by a gloomy and black melancholy that nothing could dissipate. The image of Clerval was forever before me, ghastly and murdered. More than once the agitation into which these reflections threw me made my friends dread a dangerous relapse. Alas, why did they preserve so miserable and detested a life? It was surely that I might fulfill my destiny, which is now drawing to a close. Soon, oh very soon, will death extinguish these throbbings and relieve me from the mighty weight of anguish that bears me to the dust. and in executing the award of justice, I shall also sink to rest. Then the appearance of death was distant, although the wish was ever present to my thoughts, and I often sat for hours motionless and speechless, wishing for some mighty revolution that might bury me and my destroyer in its ruins. The season of the assizes approached. I had already been 3 months in prison, and although I was still weak and in continual danger of a relapse, I was obliged to travel nearly 100 miles to the country town where the court was held. Mr. Kerwin charged himself with every care of collecting witnesses and arranging my defense. I was spared the disgrace of appearing publicly as a criminal, as the case was not brought before the court that decides on life and death. The grand jury rejected the bill on its being proved that I was on the Orkney Islands at the hour the body of my friend was found, and a fortnight after my removal, I was liberated from prison. I gotta wonder what the people in the Orkneys thought. This whole time, they're like, he just disappeared into the night. He didn't come back. And all of his stuff is still here. Luckily, he got rid of the body parts. My father was enraptured on finding me freed from the vexations of a criminal charge, that I was again allowed to breathe the fresh atmosphere and permitted to return to my native country. I did not participate in these feelings, for to me the walls of a dungeon or a palace were alike hateful. The cup of life was poisoned forever, and although the sun shone upon me as upon the happy and gay of heart, I saw around me nothing but a dense and frightful darkness, penetrated by no light but the glimmer of 2 eyes that glared upon me. Sometimes they were the expressive eyes of Henry, languishing in death, the dark orbs nearly covered by the lids and the long black lashes that fringed them. Sometimes it was the watery, clouded eyes of the monster, as I first saw them in my chamber at Ingolstadt. My father tried to awaken in me the feelings of affection. He talked of Geneva, which I should soon visit, of Elizabeth and Ernest, but these words would only draw deep groans from me. Sometimes, indeed, I felt a wish for happiness and thought with melancholy delight of my beloved cousin, or longed with a devouring maladie du pays to see once more the blue lake and rapid Rhone that had been so dear to me in early childhood. But my general state of feeling was a torpor in which a prison was as welcome a residence as the divinest scene in nature, and these fits were seldom interrupted by my paroxysms of anguish and despair. At these moments, I often endeavored to put an end to the existence I loathed, and it required unceasing attendance and vigilance to restrain me from committing some dreadful act of violence. Yeah, super depressed, suicidal even, yeah. Checks out. Yet one duty remained to me, the recollection of which finally triumphed over my selfish despair. It was necessary that I should return without delay to Geneva, there to watch over the lives of those I so fondly loved, and to lie in wait for the murderer, that if any chance led me to the place of his concealment, or if he dared again to blast me by his presence, I might with unfailing aim put an end to the existence of the monstrous image which I had endured with the mockery of a soul still more monstrous. Which I had endued with a mockery of a soul still more monstrous. My father still desired to delay our departure, fearful that I could not sustain the fatigues of a journey, for I was a shattered wreck, the shadow of a human being. My strength was gone. I was a mere skeleton, and fever night and day preyed upon my wasted frame. Seems like every time he does, this happened after he was like, oh, I made a mistake. He got super sick.
Yeah.
And Henry had.
He's either staring up at the sky or he's sick.
Yeah. Pretty much. Also, I see he's finally come around to the set a trap for the monster.
Right? I'm like, okay, he's maybe thinking somewhere. But I'm also like, are you going to tell your family, dude? I feel like he's not very good at, defense and not very good at offense.
No.
He's got no plan either way, how to protect your family and also how to,
Yeah, because the best thing that could protect them is knowledge that a terrible monster is after you and it's my fault.
Right? Maybe we need to hire some, guards. Yeah. You know?
Still, as I urged our leaving Ireland with such inquietude and impatience, my father thought it best to yield. We took our passage on board a vessel bound for Havre de Grace and sailed with a fair wind from the Irish shores. It was midnight. I lay on the deck looking at the stars. Again. This time at least he's on a bigger boat, but I lay on the deck looking at the stars and listened to the dashing of the waves. I hailed the darkness that shut Ireland from my sight, and my pulse beat with a feverish joy when I reflected that I should soon see Geneva. The past appeared to me in the light of a frightful dream. Yet the vessel in which I was, the wind that blew me from the detested shore of Ireland, is very anti-Irish, and the sea which surrounded me told me too forcibly that I was deceived by no vision, and that Clerval, my friend and dearest companion, had fallen a victim to me and the monster of my creation. I repassed in my memory my whole life, my quiet happiness while residing with my family in Geneva, the death of my mother, and my departure for Ingolstadt. I remembered, shuddering, the mad enthusiasm that hurried me on to the creation of my hideous enemy, and I called to mind the night in which he first lived. I was unable to pursue the train of thought. 1,000 feelings pressed upon me, and I wept bitterly. Ever since my recovery from the fever, I had been in the custom of taking every night a small quantity of laudanum, for it was by means of this drug only that I was enabled to gain the rest necessary for the preservation of life. What could possibly go wrong? Now he's on laudanum. Oppressed by the recollection of my various misfortunes, I now swallowed double my usual quantity, and soon slept profoundly. But sleep did not afford me respite from thought and misery. My dreams presented 1,000 objects that scared me. Towards morning, I was possessed by a kind of nightmare. I felt the fiend's grasp in my neck and could not free myself from it. Groans and cries rang in my ears. My father, who was watching over me, perceiving my restlessness, awoke me. The dashing waves were around, the cloudy sky above. The fiend was not here. A sense of security, a feeling that a truce was established between the present hour and the irresistible, disastrous future imparted to me a kind of calm forgetfulness of which the human mind is by its structure peculiarly susceptible. Chapter 22. This is a rare time, by the way, where we're ending in the middle of a chapter. The voyage came to an end. We landed and proceeded to Paris. I soon found that I had overtaxed my strength and that I must repose before I could continue my journey. My father's care and attentions were indefatigable, but he did not know the origin of my sufferings and sought erroneous methods to remedy the incurable ill.
Maybe you talked to him!
Communication! Communication!
I can't with this guy.
Yeah, I know. He wished me to seek amusement in society. I abhorred the face of man. Oh, not abhorred. They were my brethren, my fellow beings, and I felt attracted even to the most repulsive among them, as to creatures of an angelic nature and celestial mechanism. You have no pity for the thing you created. But I felt that I had no right to share their intercourse. I had unchained an enemy among them, whose joy it was to shed their blood and to revel in their groans. Only people related to you, but... How they would, each and all, abhor me and hunt me from the world, did they know my unhallowed acts and the crimes which had their source in me. So I just gotta say, like, it's kind of on, this is not to blame the victim, but, like, if people had treated the monster with, like, some modicum of, like, dignity and not literally screamed at him whenever they saw him, perhaps he would not be trying to kill everyone.
I mean, I'm still not over the fact that Frankenstein created him. Like, he knew what he looked like because he literally was the one who pieced them together, and then was like so shocked when it worked or whatever, and then he just like ran away.
Yep.
And then was just like out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, he just wandered away. It's like, yeah, again, like you could have like put him together in a better way. Just saying. My glasses keep falling. My father yielded at length to my desire to avoid society and strove by various arguments to banish my despair. Sometimes he thought that I felt deeply the degradation of being obliged to answer a charge of murder, and he endeavored to prove to me the futility of pride. Alas, my father, said I, how little do you know me. Human beings, their feelings and passions, would indeed be degraded if such a wretch as I felt pride. Justine, poor unhappy Justine, was as innocent as I, and she suffered the same charge. She died for it, and I am the cause of this. I murdered her. William, Justine, and Henry, they all died by my hands. My father had often during my imprisonment heard me make the same assertion. When I thus accused myself, he sometimes seemed to desire an explanation, and at others he appeared to consider it as the offspring of delirium, and that during my illness some idea of this kind had presented itself to my imagination, the remembrance of which I preserved in my convalescence. I avoided explanation. Great communication skills.
A comment was like, communication? Who is that?
Who's that? Yeah. I avoided explanation and maintained a continual silence concerning the wretch I had created. I had a persuasion that I should be supposed mad, and this in itself would forever have chained my tongue. But besides, I could not bring myself to disclose a secret which would fill my hearer with consternation and make fear and unnatural horror the inmates of my breast. I checked, therefore, my impatient thirst for sympathy and was silent when I would have given the world to have confided the fatal secret. Yet still, words like those I have recorded would burst uncontrollably from me. I could offer no explanation for them, but their truth was in part relieved of the burden of my mysterious woe. So, like, dude, you're worried about being seen as crazy, but you keep asserting that you killed William and Justine and Henry. Like, you're already gonna be seen. Like, it's already, like, it's literally in this paragraph that his dad's like, sure, bud. Sure you did. Like, and is assuming it. Like, at this point, like, first of all, I don't know if he'd be believed.
Right.
Like,
no. I mean, honestly, they're like, I don't know, you've been out of it raving.
Been out of it for a while. A while.
You weren't that great before that, even.
Yeah, that's true. Upon this occasion, my father said with an expression of unbounded wonder, "My dearest Victor, what infatuation is this? My dear son, I entreat you never to make such an assertion again." "I am not mad," I cried energetically. "The sun and the heavens who have viewed my operations can bear witness of my truth. I am the assassin of those most innocent victims. They died by my machinations. 1,000 times would I have shed my own blood, drop by drop, to have saved their lives, but I could not, my father. Indeed, I could not sacrifice the whole human race." The conclusion of this speech convinced my father that my ideas were deranged, and he instantly changed the subject of our conversation and endeavored to alter the course of my thoughts. He wished as much as possible to obliterate the memory of the scenes that had taken place in Ireland, and never alluded to them or suffered me to speak of my misfortunes.
He's like, sure, honey.
Alright, yeah. You see that bird over there? You want to stare at it for a while?
You like that, right?
You like that, staring. Let me get you an ocean real quick. Let's go down to the Seine and you can just stare at it.
The blower.
Leaf blower. As time passed away, I became more calm. Misery had her dwelling in my heart, but I no longer talked in the same incoherent manners of my own crime. Sufficient for me was the consciousness of them. By the utmost self-violence, I curbed the imperious voice of wretchedness, which sometimes desired to declare itself to the whole world, and my manners were calmer and more composed than they had ever been since my journey to the Sea of Ice. Yeah, this is probably not going to go great for him, is it? Like, he's finally, like, feeling good. A few days before we left for Paris on our way to Switzerland, I received the following letter from Elizabeth. "My dear friend, it gave me the greatest pleasure to receive a letter from my uncle dated at Paris. You are no longer at a formidable distance, and I may hope to see you in less than a fortnight. My poor cousin, how much you must have suffered. I expect to see you looking even more ill than when you quitted Geneva. This winter has been passed most miserably, tortured as I have been by anxious suspense, yet I hope to see peace in your countenance and to find that your heart is not totally void of comfort and tranquility. Yet I fear that the same feelings now exist that made you so miserable a year ago, even perhaps augmented by time. I would not disturb you at this period when so many misfortunes weigh upon you, but a conversation that I had with my uncle previous to his departure renders some explanation necessary before we meet. Explanation? You may possibly say, what can Elizabeth have to explain? If you really say this, my questions are answered and all my doubts satisfied. But you are distant from me, and it is possible that you may dread and yet be pleased with this explanation. And in a probability of this being the case, I dare not any longer postpone writing what, during your absence, I have often wished to express to you, but have never had the courage to begin. You well know, Victor, that our union had been the favorite plan of your parents ever since our infancy. We were told this when young, and taught to look forward to it as an event that would certainly take place. We were affectionate playfellows during childhood, and, I believe, dear and valued friends to one another as we grew older. But as brother and sister often entertain a lively affection towards each other without desiring a more intimate union, may not such also be our case? Tell me, dearest Victor, answer me, I conjure you by our mutual happiness and with simple truth. Do you not love another? You have traveled. You have spent several years of your life at Ingolstadt. And I confess to you, my friend, that when I saw you last autumn so unhappy, flying to solitude from the society of every creature, I cannot help supposing that you might regret our connection, and believe yourself bound in honor to fulfill the wishes of your parents, although they oppose themselves to your inclinations. But this is a false reasoning. I confess to you, my friend, that I love you, and that in my airy dreams of futurity you have been my constant friend and companion. But it is your happiness I desire as well as my own, when I declare to you that our marriage would render me eternally miserable, unless it were the dictate of your own free choice.
Even now I weep to think that, borne down as you are by the cruelest misfortune, you may stifle by the word honor all hope of that love and happiness which would alone restore you to yourself. I, who have so disinterested an affection for you, may increase your miseries tenfold by being an obstacle to your wishes. Ah, Victor, be assured that your cousin and playmate has too sincere a love for you not to be made miserable by this supposition. Be happy, my friend, and if you obey me in this one request, remain satisfied that nothing on earth will have the power to interrupt my tranquility. Do not let this letter disturb you. Do not answer tomorrow or the next day, or even until you come, if it will give you pain. My uncle will send me news of your health, and if I see but one smile on your lips when we meet, occasioned by this or any other exertion of mine, I shall need no other happiness. Elizabeth Lavenza, Geneva, May 18th, 17. That's where we will pick up next time with Frankenstein. Turns out, like, sometimes when a lady sees you act like weird, she's like, well, clearly you want to marry another lady. Make sure you like and subscribe to get notified when we go live. And once again, I'm Anne.
I'm Christina.
And have a great rest of your day.
Bye!